Many of us may experience insect or maybe even pest problems in the garden. And there's a couple ways that we can handle these problems. In many cases we just live with it. It's not a real big deal. It's just part of nature. But in the case of the woolly adelgid, which affects hemlock trees, after a few years, I remember camping up in the national parks and forests, and there were hemlock trees like this. Well, they're no longer available in the woods anymore. They've been cut down or they've fallen over. The woolly adelgid fed on them so many years, it defoliated them, it sucked the juices out of the leaves, and that's just a fact of life. But for us, we can control them with like an all-season oil during the summer months. And the key is to sort of prevent the problem. Don't really let it get out of hand like you're going to see right here. Here's the woolly adelgid right here, the little white cottony masses. They almost look like white cottony aphids. They suck the juices out of the leaves. You can see even here where some of the browning of the leaves has taken place, and the leaves will fall off, and after a few years, this damage becomes very evident. A common plant that many of us have in our gardens is known as euonymus. Now, this is a ground cover plant. It also can get very large, all different shapes and sizes. Great, wonderful plant. It's great to use as a screening in some cases, or, it's got nice variegated foliage. But most of them, or many of them, are susceptible to scale insects. And this is an insect that is sort of like a little white, tiny scale. If you look here, right at the underside of the leaves, you can see all the scale. And if you just tap it on your shirt, you can just see all the scale. And over time, your plant just declines. It's not a hard thing to control. Some of your all-season oils are great to use. That will smother this insect, and a couple applications really works. But this is a common problem with this plant, and if you know how to deal with it, then you can have success growing this right in your own backyard. We all can't wait till summer's here, but it does bring one thing that we don't like for many of us, and that's Japanese beetles. Now remember, Japanese beetles or insects do go through cycles. Certain parts of some states, they can be really bad, and then all of a sudden you're not going to see any maybe for a couple years. Just look at all the beetles on this rose branch right here. One way to get rid of Japanese beetles is not plant the plants that they love. And they only love about 5% of our plants. It might be our cherry trees, it might be our roses. But one thing I did find that you can do is you can get Japanese beetle traps, but don't put them in your own garden. You want them elsewhere. You might even have a neighbor you don't really like. They can put it in their garden because they'll attract Japanese beetles from hundreds and hundreds of feet away. So if you have a beetle trap in your garden, you're collecting everyone else's problem. The other thing, if you do use chemicals that you can use to spray on your plants, follow the label directions. The other thing I found is that using things as chemicals as a preventative is a little better than a curative, because once you get a lot of Japanese beetles in your garden, they attract all the others with the pheromone that they give off. The one thing you need to keep in mind is when you're trying to control pests, you got to use the proper material to control the proper pests. An insecticide may not work for spider mites. And what happens is, if we treat our garden for insects, you sometimes get a real explosion of spider mites. And here on the boxwood, if you look real closely, you'll sort of get like what they call stippling. And really close up on the leaves, it looks like someone took a pen or a pin and just kept pricking the leaves and it turns sort of yellow or chlorotic. What you need to do is turn the leaf upside down, and sometimes you'll find spider mites. Or you can take the leaves and really hit a harder sheet of white paper, and you'll see the little spider mites crawling all over. And again, follow the label directions, and that's the best way to control problems like spider mites. It may not be easy to notice insects. Some can be so small, they're the size of a tip of a pin. And, you have a real hard time maybe seeing thrips on dailies. These are very tiny insects, and you can see some of the damage is what you normally will see, especially on red flower dailies, as we get sort of this crinkling or whitening or discoloration. And if you get a magnifying glass, you can look very close, and you'll see these very small, narrow insects. they really come from the lawn. So, what happens is they come from the lawn and hop on your plants. Now, there's only 1 or 2 thrips per flower, but if you have a lot of thrips on your flowers, you might consider using a recommended insecticide. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
For more garden tips, use the internet to click on the In the Garden website at www.inthegardenradio.com.